Hey everybody, so this one's going to be really random. I want to discuss something which ties into all that mental phenomena I associate with the law of attraction. I've spoken at length in the past about how elusive the problem of self or selfhood is. It's true that when we turn powerful microscopes and medical imaging on the brain, we can't seem to find anything truly static, unchanging, or carried over from one moment to the next. And yet the sense of self is the one thing that is most real to us. It's more real than anything you perceive because all of your impressions about the world are experienced through a subjective filter or lens. And what is subjective experience? Devoid of some locus of awareness. Self, essentially. This video is all about the problem of nothingness. And I'm using that word in its truest definition. When I say nothing, I genuinely mean the absence of everything. This work is going to be about our relationship with it, why it keeps cropping up in philosophy, and why our relationship with nothing should matter to you. Hey good people, I'm Derek London. Thanks for checking out my channel. Around here we talk about everything law of attraction. We discuss a lot about the psychological, scientific, and rational basis for subscribing to this philosophy of mine. And in fact, if your reality could stand some change for the better, you have only to start there, with your mind. Hit that subscribe button and settle in, because your life will never be the same. Hey everyone, thanks for stopping by. I want to repeat that last sentence prior to the jingle. Why should our relationship with nothing matter? Repeat that question in your head. It sounds like a stupid query, doesn't it? Because matter is the very opposite of nothing. Yet when something matters to us, we're saying it quite literally exists, the way physical properties do. Worded differently, it means something. So to speak of our relationship with nothing mattering or meaning something to us, isn't that an out-and-out contradiction? This is likely why people get so exasperated with philosophers. To a person who takes things literally, it sounds like mere wordplay. But I'm going to quote a passage from the Tao Te Ching to encapsulate our relationship with nothingness. That is the absence of everything. Now listen to this. 30 spokes share the wheel's hub. It is the center hole that makes it useful. Shape clay into a vessel. It is the space within that makes it useful. Cut doors and windows for a room. It is the holes which make it useful. Therefore, profit comes from what is there, usefulness from what is not there. End quote. Another interpretation of that last sentence goes, we work with being, but non-being is what we use. End quote. I hope these ancient words of Lao Tzu help you to conceive of the problem a little better. Now I'm going to give you some real examples of this to show that this is an actual conundrum and not just wordplay. I mentioned the issue of self earlier, right? And I've made some interesting content on it throughout my channel, which will be linked below in the description and in the end screen. But the fundamental issue with there existing no tangible being, entity, or unitary self observable in the brain and body is what I explained at the outset. Essentially, everything that is you is nothing more than process. The entirety of your existence is perfectly understood in material or physical terms, biology and circumstance. That's you, baby. But how boring. Because the subjective quality of being you, and I mean quite explicitly now, that which it is like to be you, is the only thing you will ever accept as truly real. It's also the whole point of this song and dance, isn't it? Indeed, prior to experiencing the outside world, there must be something to whom the external world is happening. Therefore, the sense of self, which is nothing more than a physical process, is even more primary than the brain and body. And here's the clincher. Aside from me reporting to you through language that I exist and have a subjective interior life of my own, There's no other way for you to truly know I experience the world except to observe my complicated interactions with my environment. Well, to date, science has never discovered something that doesn't have some kind of resonance or interaction with its surroundings. Even rocks possess that quality. So the question this begs is, are the rocks having some internal subjective experience? Obviously, the rocks are not intelligent, and I'm not even committing myself to this viewpoint. What I'm asking, though, is if there is something which it is like to be a rock. This leads us into very uncomfortable terrain, doesn't it? Why? Because using a strictly scientific methodology, I have made a perfectly sound case that matter, physical properties, simply can't explain conscious experience, because there is nothing that behaves as though it were without an interior subjective life. There's nothing we know of that doesn't have a transactional relationship with its environment, which is the only basis upon which to assume something has a subjective experience. Now, materialist atheists will try to solve the problem by saying that consciousness is an emergent property, meaning that it's basically caused by brains, that when you get right down to it, the self doesn't actually exist. This is untenable for many reasons. Most notably, it's what's been called mereological nihilism. You basically argue yourself out of existence. Yet as I've substantiated, you can't do that, because the sense of self is the one assumption that governs all of your actions. Without there being someone or something to whom an experience is happening, there are no grounds to believe your decisions and actions have any relevance, because all of them are nothing more than the proverbial coin toss of genetics and circumstance. The explanation is useless because it makes a free lunch out of existence and it vests it with no purpose. Okay, so the classic atheist solution to the problem doesn't work. Religious leaders, on the other hand, have tried to solve this issue by postulating a soul. Yet, what is a soul? It's a timeless, spaceless, immaterial entity. Well, what's the difference between that and saying the self is nothing? See how religious people and atheists are essentially saying the same thing. The atheist says the self doesn't exist, and the religious person says, sure it does, it's just composed of nothing, that's all. It seems no matter how you slice it, you have a relationship with nothing, just as Lao Tzu put it. The God problem is much like this as well. How so? The materialist atheist will postulate an eternal universe, which is again just trying to get a free lunch. Or they might pull what certain leading physicists are now showing through mathematics, that the entire universe can be reduced to a point which expands from nothing. But this really muddies the meaning of the words something versus nothing. That is, something being distinct from nothing as a state of not anything. And then there is the God explanation, which is just another version of the soul. God is timeless, spaceless, immaterial. Great. Basically, God is nothing. Thanks for clearing that up. But we also have a relationship with nothing in another way. Take the free will problem. Materialists say there is no free will, just like there is no soul. Your actions are perfectly apprehended in terms of your genetics and environment. While an idealist might say, no, I do have free will, because the assumption of free will is autogenous or self-creating. If I assume I have free will, then I have it, because it takes that assumption to make any decisions. To which the materialist says, sure, but that may have happened through mindless, unguided processes. The assumption of free will is still explained through causal physical events. Again, it's the same issue, just worded a little differently. On the one hand, we've defined free will as determinism, and on the other, we've defined determinism as free will, depending on your angle. Here's another example of our relationship with nothing. I talked about this in my video entitled More on the Supernatural. That'll be linked below in the description. In it, I talk about an old band called the Mamas and the Papas. You remember them? They were a harmony-driven group. And they said once that they would not begin recording in the studio until Harvey showed up in their rehearsal. Harvey was a strange fifth voice that would emerge from the fully integrated dynamics of the group. It was just a spooky kind of phenomenon. Now, obviously, Harvey isn't a person in the way you and I tend to think of ourselves. Yet, when taken as an illustration for the problem of self, it's eerily similar. Harvey is perfectly explained in terms of the synergetic sum of the band's collaborators, right? Well, your sense of self is nothing more than the synergetic sum of all collaborating organs in your brain and body. Harvey was the reason the Mamas and the Papas composed harmony-driven music. But Harvey doesn't exist. And if you want another funny example, why am I even making this video? Well, nothing is the purpose of me making this video. No, really, I'm literally making a case for the relationship we all have with nothing. By definition, there is no purpose to that. Unless, of course, I'm making this video for its own sake. And therefore, I'm again just muddying the waters between those words something and nothing, aren't I? Just like the dancer dances for its own sake. He's not reaching some destination in his tango. The tango is his reason for dancing. I'm a chatterbox who just finds this stuff interesting. Need I any reason beyond that? So what's my point? Well, the point is this. Life is entirely what you make of it. It can be every bit as purposeful or meaningless as you choose. But the explanation you eventually commit to and go with is utterly rhetorical and an expression of what you fill your mind with. Nothing can be personified as Heidegger put it when he said that nothing noths. Nothing can consume you and leave you feeling empty. Or you can live your life like an episode of Seinfeld, the famous show about nothing, which is basically synonymous with being a show about everything, in which case the show runs for its own sake. See, it's all a matter of perspective. Anyway, I think that's where I'll leave it for today, guys. Tell me below what you think of all that in the comments. Near the beginning of this video, I said that I wasn't playing with words. But what I hope to get across here, having run through the whole matter, is that it's all wordplay. Life is nothing but wordplay. And if you find that upsetting or uncomfortable, I'm sorry, but technically, I haven't said a thing. Hey guys, did you like this video? You know what to do. And if something I mentioned today resonated with you, click one of them cards on this screen. I have lots of related content sure to interest you. Thanks as always for your views, and we'll see you next time.